You are listening to Down Home. Imagine this. You're chatting with someone and the conversation veers towards Nova Scotia, which is in Canada for our American listeners. Suddenly, you mention the rich black history woven into the province's fabric. The reaction? Empty gazes, surprise, disbelief. Yes, this is true. It's a situation black Nova Scotians come across more frequently than you expect. Picture the shock when we recount tales of our ancestors who blazed trails, battled for freedom and equality against all odds. This astonishment serves as yet another reminder that history, especially for racialized communities, often lies hidden beneath layers of neglect and disregard. In this episode, Jay and I delve into the New York Times article titled A Journey Through Black Nova Scotia, penned by Shayla Martin and initially released on September 12, 2022. In this article, Shayla writes about her thoughts and observations as she tours around various black historic sites in Nova Scotia. A link to her site will be on the show notes. I encourage you to read the article. It's a good synopsis of what it's like for an African American to discover black history outside of the U.S. I'm Derek Wise, and on behalf of Jay Jones, welcome to Down Home, the Canadian experience from two black men.
Breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground, simple breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground, simple breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground, simple breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground, yeah. On a high plateau from the one down below to the
Yeah, I saw this article, or actually I heard about the article, I should say, about a year ago.
I think we might have talked about it. We might have.
Yeah, we talked about it, and I kind of, I tried, someone sent me the link, and I didn't have access to the New York Times at the time.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, my wife's given me access to the New York Times.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting. What did you think about the article?
I thought it was pretty cool in the sense of how people want to know their history. You know, she had an inkling and she, searched it, but it was also kind of sad just in the simple fact that, something that we always struggled with was the fact that, none of that stuff was ever really known unless you search for it. And to hear some of the testimonies she heard from some of the residents of Africville, say there was one lady she talked to and she was like, it was such a pleasure to grow up in Africville, because of the community. So, you could see how, as you read those things, I was, we weren't there for Africville, but I don't know, man, it just kind of leaves you a little bit sad a bit.
The author of the New York Times article is Shayla Martin, an award-winning travel writer and editor with a passion of exploring the world and its diverse food. Shayla is currently based out of Washington, D.C., with a journey that spans from New York City to North Carolina and even Madrid. Shayla's writing talents are showcased through her work as the former digital editor of Four Seasons magazine, where she developed her skills and passion for storytelling. Her byline graces the pages of prestigious publications such as the New York Times, Architectural Digest, Coastal Living, AARP Magazine, Veranda, Hemisphere, and many more. You can tell that Shayla has a passion for storytelling in this article about Nova Scotia. One of the things you were talking about, I think her name was Andrea Davis.
Mm-hmm.
She runs the Black Loyalist Heritage Center in Shelburne, and she was commenting on how when she was growing up, there was no focus on Black culture or understanding. And we've talked about that many times too. Like when we were growing up, there, besides the church and our elders, there was no focus on Black culture or what's considered to be Black culture, our history. There was no focus on our history at all.
Yeah.
Like honestly, I've learned more about Nova Scotian Black history in the last 5 or 6 years than and I'm a man in my 50s.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm 51 actually. I'm not in my 50s. I'm 51.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know what I
Yeah.
mean, though.
Well, yeah.
It's kind of it's sad in that aspect, definitely.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Like, it was never available, and not only that, the elders didn't really talk about it either. You know what I mean? And the imagine the history we didn't have. Imagine the history that they didn't see or even educated about. And a lot of our early ancestors weren't educated like we ended up being.
Mm.
And so, but they had the stories, but they didn't talk about it. I wonder why. Was it because of the harsh realities, or was it just about, we're here, we got to survive, let's do what we can? And especially when it comes to Africville, she mentions, and even some of the residents here, and of what we know, Africville was a thriving community: businesses, a bank, a post office, a church, a neighborhood. People owned their land. The generational wealth was there.
Africville was a historic Black community located in Halifax, Nova Scotia. The community's history dates back to the early 1800s, when Black loyalists and Black refugees of the War of 1812 settled in the area. Initially, Black people settled in the outskirts of Halifax due to segregation and discrimination. Over time, Africville grew into a vibrant and tight-knit community, despite facing systemic racism and neglect from the municipal government. The residents built homes, churches, a school, and other essential infrastructure, all on their own, without the help and support of the local municipality. The community lacked basic services such as running water, sewage systems, and proper roads due to the fact that the local municipality refused to invest resources in the area. This is a blatant display of racism when you consider the fact that the municipality collected taxes from each homeowner. Despite this, the residents of Africville created a rich and vibrant cultured life, with strong community bonds and a deep sense of Black identity. Throughout the years, there were various attempts by the city to relocate Africville residents, often under the guise of urban renewal or development projects. Despite community protest and resistance, the city eventually made the decision to forcibly relocate the residents and demolish Africville in the 1960s. Yeah, the author really, she did a pretty thorough tour around different sites, and then ended up at the Africville annual picnic. And that's where she actually, the author, I should mention her name, is Shayla Martin from the New York Times. Youngish African American lady.
Yeah,
but sorry, yeah, she mentioned how similar she walked up to this picnic and said, these women could have been her aunties from down home in the States, right? Another example of how even though we're separated by distance, the Black community in North America, there's more that binds us together than separates us, right?
Yeah. And yeah, for sure. And talking about communities, the simple fact that, there were, like, at different parts of history, there were 50 Black communities within Nova Scotia, which I didn't know, which kind of had dissipated by the time we were born.
Yeah. If you looked at the pictures in the article, like she said, yeah, this community, and it was like an open field.
Yeah,
like that's
exactly.
kind of it's kind of, I don't know how I feel about that though, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, from a perspective of Black people, and and being Nova Scotian and being Canadian, and not always knowing our history other than what we were raised with, it's sad that all that history is lost somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And And that's the thing. Any culture, any heritage, if they lose their sense of self and don't know their history, uh, how do you find your place?
Yeah,
Even though we
exactly.
do,
Yeah.
but because we all do. The human race just survives, and we do what we have to do. But our histories and our cultures, you know, people of color is not well known. That's
Yeah,
what I
exactly.
find the saddest.
Yeah. Well, one encouraging thing about this article is that Shayla actually got to interview um, Renee Boudreau. So Renee
Hmm.
Boudreau is the lady that opened up a uh, like an experiential tourist kind of company.
Hmm.
So she's the one that she would do like she partnered with a bike tour company, and she has a Black historical bike tour, and there
Hmm.
was a Black excellent boat cruise in the Halifax Harbor, and other type of historical events like that
Yeah.
kind of tours around the province.
Hmm.
Um, that's very encouraging. I had no idea.
Yeah, no, either did I.
Yeah.
So I think on the level, at a grassroots level, I think there are people who are interested in delving into seeing what they can find.
Mm.
And I think if you come face to face with a lot of people, especially if you were, if you go to like the Africville celebration, I think you hear a lot of stories, and I think people would be a lot more open to talking about it in that kind of environment, because
Hmm.
it celebrates the pride and the history and the culture. Not to say what happened was a travesty, but what can we take from that and move on forward. We just got to keep on talking about it, I think.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the author Shayla Martin, I think one of the things that surprised her, I kind of read into this a little bit, was she found there was a very close knit sense of community in Nova Scotia amongst the Black community,
Hmm.
and um, it was almost like an expression of surprise. Nova Scotia has a rich history of close knit Black communities that have formed over centuries, often stemming from the experiences of Black loyalists, refugees of the War of 1812, and Black immigrants from various parts of the world. Apart from Africville, there are other long-standing Black communities in Nova Scotia. There is North Preston, East Preston, Cherrybrook, Beachville, and Whitney Pier. In all these communities, you'll find a deep sense of pride in their heritage, resilience in the face of historical injustices, and a commitment to preserving Black culture and history for future generations. These close-knit Black communities in Nova Scotia continue to be centers of strength, culture, and activism.
Hmm.
Because I think there's that overwhelming sense that when you move away from Nova Scotia and you tell someone that you're from Nova Scotia, as Renee Boudreau was saying, because she had moved back to explore her heritage there, is there's Black people in Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know it
Yeah.
and the fact of the matter is we were the largest before the mass immigration from the Caribbean in the 1960s.
Hmm.
Nova Scotian held the largest Black population in Canada.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
a fact that I think is lost on a few people. You know.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It was always, yeah. I remember, those stories of Halifax being heavily populated per capita.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, we experienced that. There was always
Hmm.
you know different concentrations of Black communities, man.
Hmm.
It's something that looking back, it's something that we kind of took for granted. I took for granted for sure.
Yeah, and I think we all did too. And also, the community just sort of started to break apart when we lost like some of those community leaders,
Mm,
as they moved on. You know, the the that close knit community just seemed to dissipate as we got older and
yeah.
experienced different things, and you know, and just trying to survive.
Yeah, the author. How did she took she had lunch in the North End, and she
Yeah.
described it. Obviously, didn't do her research about the North End of Halifax, but she said, what she say? She described it as a trendy neighborhood filled with colorful houses. Colorful
Yeah.
houses.
Yeah, I think that's when gentrification started, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
2022.
Yeah,
That's
for sure.
full fledged
Well,
gentrification.
full-fledged, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
even when we went down last year, it was like, whoa, this is not the North End I remember.
Yeah, like I went for a walk in by the armories, right? Not
Mhm.
near the commons. There was
Yeah.
this humongous like outdoor patio that was like, it was like a beer garden.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
I was like, what is this? And like you're
Mhm.
just walking down a Grigola Street, all the trendy
Yeah.
hipster locations.
Yeah.
Man, it's I'm of two minds though, because it's kind of sad to see that the legacy families weren't able to stay
Mhm.
for
Yeah.
whatever reason,
Yeah. Yeah.
whether that be taking advantage of the sale of the property to better further their families or whatever.
Mhm.
Whatever. A lot of them, most of them own their homes
Yeah. Yeah.
or whatever that may be. But it was kind of sad to see that all the legacy families on Creighton Street and Main Street were not able to stick it out.
To sustain. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. That's that's one of the problem with gentrification. I think any neighborhood loses part of their identity because people get pushed out or they sell. And yeah.
Mhm. Well, interesting article, Journey Through
Hmm.
Black Nova Scotia, New York Times, which is pretty cool, by Shayla Martin. It came out way back in September 12th of 2022.
Breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground, simple breaking new ground, breaking new ground.
You have been listening to Down Home. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
Breaking new ground, simple breaking new ground, breaking new ground, breaking new ground, yeah. On a high plateau, from the one down below to the future of the funk, getting lost in the flow. Contact with the spark magex. Now it's time to flex with the force from the soul, reaching all aspects, getting deep, no time to sleep. As you reach your next phase, laying it all on the line. New trails start to blaze. It's a fire inside, a brand new path, breaking down the sum to one. Feeling free, I just laugh with the joy.
The song Breaking New Ground from The Breakdown.
Like magic prescribed, only to see the perfect blend, like a diamond in the rough, ready to drop a perfect gem. It's time to shine so fine to see what you find. Revolution.